Hey, good morning, guys. I'm on my way to work, and I wanted to talk about why we avoid true intimacy. And this might be a long one. I'm not sure. I start talking, and I start rambling, and I lose track of time. But the reason I was thinking about this was because of I do a lot of counseling sessions on communication. And one of the biggest problems with effective communication, and effective communication is when two or more people come together in a clear understanding of where each other's coming from. It doesn't necessarily mean that we agree, but we understand each other's perspective and why we think what we think, and just all the intimate details of the other person's personality for that particular dialogue. All right, I'm just waiting for this truck. So what is intimacy? A lot of people will immediately think about sex when it comes to intimacy, and yes, sex is a very intimate physical act between two people, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's intimacy. Because of our society today and what we've done with the beautiful physical connection between two people has kind of corrupted the magic of it. And I remember I was talking to somebody the other day about making love, and a lot and I'm guilty of it myself, but a lot of people today they think that's corny. They want to I don't want to drop an F-bomb, but that's where it is. We want to get real physical, real aggressive, that exciting, just kind of, hard, fast, explosive sexual connection. And that's fun, that's fun. But making love is a whole nother level. And I had explained it with this individual, and I said, making love is really when two people come together and they really have this intense compassion and care for each other, where they want to please each other on a spiritual level, getting so in tune with each other's body language and verbal language that they become one in that moment, where they're putting all of their heart into each other to create this moment, this time, this session of intense happiness and pleasure. And I know I've seen on Facebook a couple you'll see these little surveys, and one of them was, does loving the person create more intensity and magic when we're having sex? And the answer is absolutely yes. But often, a lot of us, because we're afraid of true intimacy, we will settle for the superficial act of simply having sex. So in creating true intimacy, well, number one, let's go over why do we avoid true intimacy. And the biggest reason is pretty obvious for a lot of us. We avoid it because we're afraid that if we get that vulnerable and that close to someone, they will reject us. So there is a real risk with real intimacy for real rejection, real disappointment, real expectations not being met. You know, all of those things will come into play if we venture into the realm of real intimacy. And it's starting to get cloudy, so let me change my spectacles. Even like with my sunglasses, you know, there's a better connection even over this video when you can see my eyes. Okay. So when we're trying to connect, when we need to connect, you know, some of the problems that I'll see with someone is obviously their self-esteem and their own self-worth. And, you know, one of the signs I'll see is that they won't give me eye contact. Their eyes will shift all over the place. And part of that is because there's such a devalue, a lack of value for their own self-worth that they can't meet another person's eyes. And so, of course, you know, I've done all these videos on self-worth. We can't embrace, we can't be brave enough to have real intimacy if we have no self-worth, okay? I can't stress that enough. Because to walk into the realm of being naked emotionally with someone else, it is the most powerful spiritual connection you can have with someone. And then when you get physical, it just seals the deal. So it's going to come back to, how am I communicating physically and verbally with another person? Am I communicating? Now, one of the greatest deceptions in our dialogue is we make assumptions with the other person. We assume that we know what they're thinking and what they're saying without getting clear understanding, without getting clarification or verification, you know. And the way we do that is we ask questions, you know. And it's funny how many of us will walk away from a conversation assuming we knew what they meant. And often that assumption is never verified with a question. You know, I mean, it's a simple question. What did you mean by that? You know, and here's the funny part. We don't ask that question because we're afraid of rejection. And so that comes back to our self-worth. We don't venture into being inquisitive with our conversation because of our own self-esteem. We think the more we hear, the more we're going to be disappointed, or the more conversation we have, the more they're going to figure out that we're not worthy. And they will figure that out, because if we don't believe we're worthy, they will figure that out, because it will translate in our body language. It'll translate in our verbiage. It'll come across eventually. We can't hide that. We can't hide our own low self-esteem. And this is why a lot of us don't have deep conversations, because we're afraid the other person's going to discover who we think we really are. Now, I said who we think we really are, not who we are. It's who we think we are. Because of our own self-deception of being unworthy, of being ugly, of being stupid, of being a loser. Because we've convinced ourselves subconsciously, and some of us consciously, that we're a reject. It will come across in conversation. So in order to create a healthy relationship, I have to have a healthy perception of myself. So intimacy starts with me. Let me just break it out. Intimacy starts with me and my relationship with God, okay? Who God sees me to be and who I believe myself to be. Because, those of us who believe, we know that God loves us and God has forgiven us. But let's be truthful. A lot of us don't accept that. We don't accept being chosen. We don't accept being loved or forgiven. Because a lot of us will condemn ourselves for past mistakes, and we will hold ourselves to this unrealistic level of self-accountability. We beat ourselves down with this condemnation that is just unrealistic and totally unhealthy. And then it translates in our relationships, it will come off either we will be too aggressive, too needy, too clingy, too defensive. It's too much. One of the things, I like one of the new terms that I heard, I think I heard Dee Dee saying, was that you're too extra. You've got all this extra emotional baggage that you need to let go in order to have an effective, intimate relationship with another human being. I'm gonna just let that sink in for a little bit. Intimacy starts with ourselves. It starts with how we treat ourselves, who we believe ourselves to be. And if you don't believe, and this is, it's, you can tell by the way somebody treats themselves, their own self-value. And it's funny because we all want intimacy, or we say we want intimacy, but if you really understand intimacy is real honesty. It's real truth. When I talk about being emotionally naked, and vulnerable with somebody else, it doesn't get more honest than that moment. When you're with someone and they know all your faults and your strengths, they know all your flaws, and your successes, and they love you and they accept you. That doesn't mean they want to put up with your bad attitude, but it means that they're not going to throw you out because of it, and vice versa. Which is why it's so important that the person you pick to be with, that you formed this pact, this commitment. So I remember I used to say in one of my groups when I was doing relationships, that what if you could only get married once? What if you could only get pregnant by one person and you could never get divorced? What if there was a one shot at true love? How much more careful would we be with forming these connections with people? Would we take more time? Would we have deeper conversations? Would we screen people and their families and their background better? We go through a deeper background check for our 9 to 5 than we do for the 24/7 we're going to be with somebody else. Yeah, that was deep. We go through all the credit check, the background check, the interview, the resume, all that for a 9 to 5. And yet for that person that we're going to be with 24/7, half the time we don't even know their favorite color. And that's the problem. We develop these shallow relationships that can't survive the test of time. And that's not just in romance. That's in relationships between friends, with family, with parents and their kids. It's all across the board. And what happens is that people will end up forming these intensely intimate relationships with their pets. And I'm not dogging people that love animals. I love animals too. But your relationship with your dog, pet, snake, rabbit, rat, whatever, cannot replace the magic and intensity and honesty of having a real intimate connection with another human being. It can't replace that. So in order to really start developing those skills and those techniques, we have to practice intimate communication. And it starts with family, and then it can progress to friends, and we practice those conversations with other people. And if you're not spending time with people, you're not going to get intimate with them. Okay. Same thing with your relationship with God. If you're not spending time talking to God and listening to Him, you're not going to have this strong faith base, that you need to survive the trials that you're going to encounter. You're not going to get to know who you truly are. So, that's kind of my topic for today on intimacy. I hope that helps some people out there. As always, give me a call, text me, message me. Let me know if you have any questions or whatever. I love having dialogue on these topics because it helps me. It helps me. In fact, 90% of my topics come from conversations with my friends and my clients. And it helps me grow. So I want to just pass it on, each one teach one. All those things are critical for us to progress as a society, as a family. So I'm almost to work. I love you guys, and I'll talk to you later.